everyone, it's Terry with New Mercies for Moms, and today I'm bringing you your midweek pep talk. And this week we've been talking about Psalm 103, verses 13 through 14. And this passage says, "As a father shows compassion to his children, so the Lord shows compassion to those who fear him. For he knows our frame, he remembers that we are dust." And if you read my devotion on Monday, I shared a little bit about how this verse has been resonating with me and my motherhood right now in terms of having realistic expectations for my kids, because I can find myself getting frustrated when they're basically acting appropriate for their age. And it's this gentle reminder the Lord's given me to really stop and remember their state and to have compassion on them and gentleness the same way the Lord does with me. And as I've thought through this, there's kind of been this tension that came up for me as a mom between having these realistic expectations while also maintaining standards. And I think it's a really important balance that we need to walk as parents between the two. And as I've thought about this and kind of meditated on this verse and thought about the Lord's character, what I've realized is that we don't have to compromise one for the other. And I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you about that today. The first thing I would say is that when we're trying to reconcile how do we have realistic expectations for our kids while still maintaining standards and putting forward requirements that we hope our children will grow into meeting, the Lord demonstrates this perfectly for us, because in his graciousness and his mercy and his tenderness toward us, he does not compromise his holiness, and he does not compromise his requirement for righteousness. What I've kind of seen for me in this situation is that the standards are kind of what I put out there for my kids so that they have an understanding of what we are working toward and what is kind of the ultimate expectation. But my realistic expectations for today are for myself, and knowing that there's going to be a lot of times my kids don't meet those standards because they're sinners and they're also 5 and 2, and it's going to take a lot of time and growth and sanctification for them to be able to live a life of righteousness consistently. And even as an adult, that's not something I do all the time. So something I wanted to share with you that I wrote down the other day that is just kind of really stuck with me is that God is uncompromising in his standards for our holiness, yet entirely loving in his understanding of our inability to meet them. He provided a way through Jesus and walks with us to help us. He knew that we weren't able to meet his standards, but he didn't remove them. Instead of being frustrated and carrying out his wrath against us, he worked through it with us. And so I think it's all about our mindset regarding our children's ability to meet our standards. That's what realistic expectations are. They keep us from allowing our emotions to be governed by our children's ability or inability to meet our expectations or our standards. And so I think it's just meeting our children where they are, and instead of looking at their behavior as performance-based, we are trying to look at their behavior as teaching moments. And man, this is something that's really hard for me. It's just a lot easier when my kids do and say the things that I want them to do and say, or I hope they'll do and say. And it takes a lot more energy and effort and work to teach instead of just demand. But I know that that's what God does with me, and that's what he invites us to be a part of as parents who model his kind of love. And so I'm trying to push through those hard places, and I'm trying to take deep breaths and rely on his strength to do those things in those moments, to take an opportunity to encourage righteousness, to take an opportunity to remind them of their standing with the Lord when they believe in him, and to not become frustrated and irritated by their lack of ability to do things on their own. It's just a great opportunity for us to basically point them back to Jesus and say, this is why we need him. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that's helpful to you in some way. And before I go, there was just one more verse I wanted to share with you that I felt like really tied in with this. I feel like, compassion is such a big part of this verse, and it says that is the reason the Lord remembers we are dust is because of the compassion he has for us. And I think part of our compassion with our kids is adjusting our lives to be available to guide them, like I was just talking about, and teaching them, and meet them in a place where they are at. And it reminded me of this verse and a little devotional I read by another mom writer a while back. And the verse is Genesis 33:14. And it's talking about this moment when Jacob reunites with his brother Esau. And they had this big falling out. You can go back and read all this for yourselves. But they reconcile, and Jacob meets up with Esau with all of his family, and Esau invites him to travel on together. And what Jacob's response is he says, "Let my lord Esau pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me and at the pace of the children." And man, this verse, when I read this devotional by this other mama writer, she explained about how it just really convicted her, like leading on at the pace of the children. And that is something that can be so hard because we're so used to going at our own pace. And I know before I had kids, it was like a mile a minute. And taking care of children and having to go at their pace, you just really have to slow down, and you really have to sacrifice your expectations of yourself. And you have to just be patient and have just a completely different goal for the day in many ways. And I just see these two verses kind of coming together in this way of we remember their nature, we stop, and we remind ourselves of that, and then we lead accordingly. We lead at their pace instead of our pace. And tomorrow I'm going to talk a little bit about how literally, like time-wise, that is something I'm having to work on, and a place where I see I need to adjust my expectations for my kids because I'm trying to go at a pace that is not matching with their stage of life. So I hope you'll join us for that post tomorrow, and we look forward to hearing from you more. We love hearing your comments and what you're learning and what the Lord's sharing with you, and just any insight you have about these scriptures or what the Lord's sharing with you about motherhood in other areas. We would just love to hear your feedback. And as always, you can check out our website, newmerciesformoms.com, if you've missed any of our devotionals. And again, we can go to the Etsy page to check out our hard copy of our devotionals. We have prints available as well as a full set with a stand if you would like to have something around your house that you can look at every day and just while you're doing the dishes or folding laundry, meditate more on God's Word. So we hope you're having a great week, getting excited for Halloween and all of that with your children, and we will talk to you soon. Keep pressing on, mamas. Bye.